They say there's a stretch of forest out near the Idaho-Montana line where even the locals won't camp unless they're armed. Not because of bears, not because of people, but because, out there, when the woods go quiet, it stays that way, for hours. And those who've stayed through that silence don't usually talk about it again. One man did. His name was Dean Miller, a 41-year-old electrician from Spokane who just wanted a quiet weekend off-grid. He'd been camping his whole life, experienced, level-headed, never bought into the ghost stories. So when the locals warned him, "Bring a gun if you're camping out there," he laughed it off, said he'd be fine with his flashlight and a pocket knife. 3 days later, he drove out of those woods at sunrise, covered in blood, half his gear missing, and one phrase he kept repeating to the deputies that found him: "It wasn't human." Nobody's stayed overnight there since. This is his testimony. Crooked Timber Hollow. That's what the locals call it. It's not marked on tourist maps, just an unpaved road that snakes 23 miles through national forest, past an old ranger cabin that's been boarded up since 2006. No cell service, no electricity, no sound except what the forest decides you're allowed to hear. Hunters say it's good country. Lots of elk sign, clean water, heavy cover. But they also say you never hunt there alone. Between 2004 and 2018, 3 campers vanished inside a 6-mile radius of this hollow. Official reports blamed weather, animal attacks, getting lost. Yet in every case, the campsites were found intact, food untouched, weapons still lying out. Rangers don't talk much about it anymore. The few who do just tell you, "We don't patrol that side of the ridge after dark." That's the same ridge Dean Miller parked beneath on a Friday evening in June 2017, thinking he'd spend 2 nights fishing and clearing his head. He left his truck near the tree line, set up camp by the creek, and texted his sister, "No service out here. Back Sunday, don't worry." That message was never delivered. To understand what happened next, you need to know the kind of place Crooked Timber Hollow really is. Dean Miller wasn't the kind of man who scared easily. 41 years old, divorced, worked maintenance for a power company in Spokane. The kind of guy who fixed everything himself, from his truck to his roof. His coworkers said he was quiet, methodical, the kind of man who double-checks every knot when he ties down a load. He wasn't reckless. He just liked being alone. Every summer, Dean would take 3 or 4 weekends and drive out to camp. No friends, no family, no noise. He said the woods helped him think straight. That June, his life was in a bit of a spiral. Divorce papers finalized, job stress piling up, insomnia keeping him awake half the night. He wanted distance. A place without phone calls, without reminders. So when a coworker mentioned a spot up near the Idaho line, good fishing, nobody around, he latched onto it. The guy added, half joking, "Just bring a gun if you go there." Dean laughed, said, "I'll bring extra coffee instead." He wasn't a hunter, didn't even own a firearm. Closest thing he had was a folding knife he used for cutting wire. He packed light, tent, sleeping bag, small cooler, first aid kit, and his fishing rod. He left at dawn on June 16th, 2017. The weather was clear, roads dry, just over 70 degrees. By the time he reached the tree line of Crooked Timber Hollow, the sun was high, and he'd already driven 40 minutes without seeing another car. In his dashcam footage, the last clip that was recovered, you can hear him say quietly, almost to himself, "Feels like no one's been out here in years." That's when he turned off the road and headed down into the hollow. Dean parked his truck near the edge of a small clearing, flat ground beside a creek that wound down between two steep ridges. He got out, stretched his legs, and just stood there for a while, listening. Normally you'd hear something. Crickets, birds, maybe the distant rattle of a woodpecker. But here, it was like the forest had a volume knob, turned all the way down. He checked his phone. No service as expected. Glanced at the dashboard clock. 5:47 p.m. Plenty of daylight left, he figured. He unloaded his tent, small propane stove, and cooler, then set up camp about 30 yards from the water. The creek was slow, dark, clear. The kind that hides shadows just beneath the surface. A few yards downstream, he noticed a fire ring made of old stones. It wasn't recent. Ashes long scattered, beer cans rusted. But what bothered him wasn't the mess, it was the gear. Half buried in the dirt beside the pit was a camping chair, folded halfway shut, with one leg snapped clean off. A jacket sleeve stuck out from under it, sun-bleached and torn. He thought about packing it up to throw away later, then decided to leave it. Something about touching another person's gear out here didn't feel right. He lit his small camp stove and started heating water for coffee. The sound of the flame was the only thing breaking the silence. Soft, steady, almost comforting. Then, from somewhere beyond the ridge, came a low, distant echo. Not thunder, sharper, like a heavy door slamming against wood. It only happened once. He looked up, waited. Nothing followed. The forest went still again. Dean told himself it was just logging equipment. But that hollow sound didn't fit. As the sun began to fall behind the ridge, the temperature dropped fast, from warm daylight to an unexpected chill that settled in his chest. He zipped up his jacket, poured his coffee, and sat watching the tree line. The forest didn't move, not even a leaf. And for the first time since he'd arrived, he caught himself thinking, maybe he should have brought that gun after all. By 9 o'clock, the sky had gone black, not the soft blue of city nights, but that kind of darkness where even the stars looked too far away. Dean sat by the fire, eating from a can of chili, watching the flames bend and snap in the wind. He said the air felt colder than it should have been for June, like it carried weight, the kind that presses against your skin. When he turned his headlamp on, the beam barely reached 20 feet before being swallowed by the trees. It was around then he heard the first sound. Not an animal, not the crack of wood, something deliberate. Crunch. A single footstep somewhere behind the tent. He froze, waited. Then again, closer this time. Crunch. Crunch. He turned his light toward the sound, but the forest gave nothing back, just a wall of black between the trunks. For a minute, he convinced himself it was a deer, maybe an elk passing through. But then he noticed, no movement, no breath, no snapping twigs running away. Whatever it was had stopped exactly when he did. Dean cleared his throat, called out, "Hey, I'm camping here. Go around." Silence. Even the wind seemed to stop. He grabbed the flashlight and swept it again through the trees, slow, steady, until it caught something pale between the branches. Just for a second. Looked like a shoulder, human height, bare, then gone. Dean stood there, heart pounding, waiting for the light to catch it again, but it didn't. He backed toward the fire, keeping the flashlight raised, telling himself it was probably his own reflection, or bark catching the beam. Still, he kept the fire going higher, feeding it until sparks jumped into the night. He didn't go inside the tent right away, just sat in the camp chair, flashlight in one hand, knife in the other, eyes on the tree line. Around midnight, the footsteps came back, this time circling, slow, methodical, always staying just beyond the firelight. Dean said it was like listening to someone test the edge of his fear, one step at a time. After half an hour, the sound stopped. Not faded, not trailed off, just stopped. And that silence, it wasn't peaceful. It was hollow. He didn't remember falling asleep, just waking up at dawn, stiff, cold, and with the fire burned down to ash. But what bothered him most wasn't the footsteps. It was the footprints he found later. You ever notice how some towns don't show up on the map until you zoom in really close? Not because they're hidden, but because no one really goes there anymore. There's one of those places up north, a stretch of woodland between two counties that doesn't even have an official name. Folks around here just call it the borderline. It's the kind of place where campgrounds sit empty, even in summer. The kind of place where people used to go hunting, fishing, or just to get away for a few days, until the disappearances started stacking up. Now, if you talk to the locals, the few still around, you'll notice something strange. No one warns you to stay away. They just tell you, if you're camping out there, bring a gun. Not because of bears, not because of wolves, but because something else started roaming those woods about 20 years ago, and everyone who's seen it either won't talk or hasn't come back. This isn't an internet story. There are police records, park ranger reports, even radio logs from a missing persons unit that went silent halfway through their sweep. And that's where this story begins, with a man named Caleb Myers, a seasoned hunter who thought he'd heard every campfire legend there was, until one trip made him realize those stories might have been warnings all along.